Stories have always been powerful teachers. Long before books and schools, people learned lessons through simple tales passed from one generation to another. Among these timeless stories, the Loyal Mongoose stands out as a powerful reminder of trust, patience, and the danger of acting without thinking. At first glance, it may seem like a simple story about an animal and a family, but hidden within it is a deep truth about human emotions and irreversible mistakes. This story takes place in a small village where a humble family lives a quiet and peaceful life. Their days are simple, filled with hard work, love, and care for one another. When a helpless baby mongoose enters their lives, they welcome it with kindness, never imagining how important it will become. Over time, the mongoose grows not just as a pet, but as a loyal guardian, forming a strong bond with the family's child. But life often tests trust in unexpected ways. A single moment of fear, a rush of anger, and a lack of patience can destroy what loyalty has built over time. This story slowly leads us towards such a moment, one that changes everything forever. The Loyal Mongoose is not only about an animal's bravery. It is about human weakness, misunderstanding, and regret. It invites us to reflect on our own actions and asks a simple but powerful question. What happens when we act before we think? As you listen to this story, remember that every word carries a lesson, one that is as meaningful today as it was long ago. In a small village near a quiet forest, there lived a poor but happy family. The family consisted of a farmer, his wife, and their only child, a baby boy. Their house was simple, made of mud and wood, but it was filled with love and peace. Every morning, the farmer went to work in the fields, while his wife stayed at home to take care of the baby and manage the household chores. Though their life was not rich, they were content and grateful for what they had. One day, while the farmer was returning from his field, he heard a soft, frightened sound coming from the bushes near the forest. Curious and concerned, he moved closer and discovered a small mongoose lying alone on the ground. The baby animal looked weak and helpless, as if it had lost its mother. The farmer felt pity in his heart. He gently picked up the mongoose and decided to take it home instead of leaving it to die in the wild. When the farmer reached home, his wife was surprised to see the little animal. At first, she was unsure, but when she saw how small and harmless the mongoose was, her heart softened. Together, they decided to keep it as a pet. They fed it milk and protected it from danger. Slowly, the mongoose began to feel safe and comfortable in its new home. As time passed, the mongoose grew stronger and more playful. It became especially close to the baby boy. Wherever the baby crawled, the mongoose followed. They played together, slept near each other, and shared a deep bond. To the baby, the mongoose was more than a pet. It was a loyal friend. And to the mongoose, the child became someone worth protecting at any cost. The farmer and his wife often noticed how careful the mongoose was around their child. It never left the baby alone and always stayed alert, as if it understood its responsibility. The family began to trust the mongoose completely, believing it was gentle and loyal. One afternoon, the farmer left for work as usual. The mother was busy with household tasks and needed to fetch water from a nearby well. Thinking it would only take a short time, she placed the baby in a cradle and left the mongoose inside the house to watch over him. The house became quiet, filled only with the soft breathing of the sleeping child. Suddenly, danger entered silently. A large, poisonous snake slithered into the house through a small hole in the wall. Its eyes were fixed on the cradle. The mongoose noticed the movement immediately. Without fear, it stood between the snake and the baby. A fierce fight followed. The mongoose attacked bravely, biting and scratching the snake again and again. After a violent struggle, the mongoose finally killed the snake. The floor was stained with blood, and the mongoose stood proudly, believing it had saved its beloved friend. It waited for the mother to return, eager to show that the baby was safe. But what happened next would change everything forever. When the mother returned home carrying the pot of water on her head, she noticed something strange the moment she stepped inside the house. The mongoose came running toward her, making excited sounds. Its mouth and fur were covered in blood. Seeing this, the woman's heart began to pound with fear. Her eyes widened, and her mind filled with terrible thoughts. She forgot everything else. Forgot the trust she once had. Forgot the loyalty of the mongoose, and forgot to think calmly. In that moment, only one fear controlled her mind. She believed the mongoose had attacked her baby. Without checking the cradle, without listening to reason, and without allowing herself even a second to think, anger and panic took over her heart. The pot of water fell from her hands, breaking on the floor, but she did not notice. Her eyes were fixed only on the blood-stained animal standing before her. Overcome by fear and rage, the woman grabbed a heavy stick lying near the door. The mongoose, unaware of her misunderstanding, ran toward her happily, as if to show that the baby was safe. But before it could reach her, the woman struck it with all her strength. The mongoose fell to the ground, letting out a weak cry. She struck again, and the loyal animal lay still, its life leaving its body silently. The house suddenly became quiet. The woman stood there, breathing heavily, her heart still racing. Slowly, the anger began to fade, replaced by a strange feeling of unease. Her eyes moved toward the cradle. With shaking hands, she walked closer and looked inside. There, sleeping peacefully, was her baby boy. He was unharmed. His face was calm, and his small chest rose and fell gently with each breath. The woman's heart skipped a beat. Confused and terrified, she looked around the room. That was when she saw the dead snake lying near the cradle, its body torn apart, blood spread across the floor. In that instant, the terrible truth struck her like lightning. The mongoose had not harmed her child, it had protected him. It had fought a deadly snake and given its life to keep the baby safe. Tears streamed down her face as regret filled her heart. She held the mongoose in her arms, rocking back and forth, wishing with all her soul that she could undo what she had done. But it was too late. Her anger and impatience had destroyed a loyal friend who had only acted out of love and duty. When the farmer returned home later that evening, he found his wife sitting silently on the floor, her face pale and full of sorrow. The dead mongoose lay beside her. Through tears, she told him everything that had happened. The farmer listened quietly, his heart growing heavier with every word. He did not shout. He did not blame her. Instead, he felt deep sadness for the mongoose, for his wife, and for the lesson they had learned too late. Together, they buried the mongoose near their home under a small tree. That place became a painful reminder of their mistake. From that day on, the family was never the same. They loved their child deeply, but the joy they once felt was shadowed by regret. The story of the loyal mongoose spread throughout the village, becoming a lesson passed down from one generation to the next. a lesson about trust, patience, and the danger of acting without thinking. And though the mongoose was gone, its loyalty lived on forever in the memory of those who learned from its sacrifice. Days passed, but the pain in the house did not fade. The absence of the mongoose was felt in every corner of the home. The small tree under which it was buried stood quietly in the yard, its leaves moving gently in the wind, as if whispering a reminder of the past. Each time the mother walked past it, her heart tightened with regret. She could not forget the moment when anger blinded her and destroyed something pure and loyal. At night, the mother often lay awake listening to the silence. She remembered how the mongoose used to follow the baby everywhere, how it slept near the cradle, and how it watched the house with careful eyes. Now, that silence felt heavy. The house that once felt safe and lively now carried the weight of guilt and sorrow. The mother blamed herself again and again, wishing she had taken just one moment to think before acting. The farmer, too, suffered in his own quiet way. He tried to stay strong for his family, but inside, his heart was broken. He remembered the day he had found the small, helpless mongoose in the forest. He had saved its life, only to see it lost in such a tragic way. Sometimes he wondered if the lesson they learned was meant not only for them, but for everyone who heard the story. As the child grew older, the parents decided to tell him the truth. One evening, as they sat together near the small tree, the father spoke gently. He told the boy about the mongoose, how it had been brave, loyal, and selfless, and how it had given its life to protect him. The child listened silently, his young heart struggling to understand such loss and sacrifice. When the story ended, the boy looked at his parents with wide eyes. He did not cry, but his voice was soft when he spoke. "It protected me," he said. The mother nodded, tears filling her eyes. From that day forward, the child showed a deep respect for animals and a strong sense of kindness. The story of the mongoose became part of who he was. As years passed, the boy grew into a thoughtful and wise young man. The lesson of the loyal mongoose stayed with him. Whenever he faced anger or fear, he remembered the story and forced himself to pause. He learned that a single moment of patience could prevent a lifetime of regret. In this way, the mongoose continued to protect, not with its body, but with its lesson. The villagers often gathered to share stories, and among them, the story of the loyal mongoose was told again and again. Parents told it to their children to teach them the danger of acting without understanding. Elders used it as an example of how trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Over time, the story became more than a tragedy. It became wisdom. The small tree in the yard grew tall and strong, its branches spreading wide. Travelers passing through the village sometimes stopped to rest in its shade, unaware of the sacrifice buried beneath its roots. But for the family, the tree was sacred. It stood as a symbol of loyalty, love, and a painful lesson learned too late. The loyal mongoose may have died in silence, but its story lived loudly in the hearts of many. It taught that anger is powerful, but patience is stronger. It showed that loyalty deserves trust, and that misunderstanding can destroy even the purest love. Most of all, it reminded everyone that thinking before acting is not weakness, it is wisdom. And so, the story of the loyal mongoose did not end with death, but with understanding. A small animal, a simple home, and a single mistake became a lesson that traveled far beyond that village, reminding the world that true loyalty must never be repaid with doubt. Time continued to move forward, but the lesson of the loyal mongoose refused to fade. The family carried it not as a story alone, but as a quiet rule for living. Every decision, every moment of anger, every sudden fear was now followed by silence, a pause to think. That pause was the space where the memory of the mongoose lived. The mother changed deeply after that tragic day. She became calmer, gentler, and more thoughtful. When anger rose inside her, she remembered the blood on the mongoose's fur and how quickly a misunderstanding had turned into irreversible loss. She learned that anger is often loud and fast, while truth is quiet and patient. From that day onward, she chose patience, even when it was difficult. Sometimes she spoke to other women in the village. She warned them about the danger of quick judgment and uncontrolled emotion. Her voice was never proud. It was humble and heavy with experience. People listened, not because she spoke loudly, but because her pain made her words real. Through her, the lesson of the mongoose spread further. The father found his own way to honor the loyal animal. Each year, on the same day the mongoose died, he cleaned the ground beneath the tree and sat there quietly. He did not speak much, but his silence was full of respect. He understood that some lessons do not need words, they need remembrance. In that silence, he forgave himself for bringing the mongoose home and forgave his wife for acting in fear. The son grew up carrying the story like a compass in his heart. As a young man, he left the village to study and work, but wherever he went, the lesson followed him. When people acted in anger, he stayed calm. When rumors spread, he searched for truth. When fear tempted him to act fast, he chose to wait. Many admired his wisdom, not knowing it was born from loss. One day, long after the parents had grown old, the son returned to the village. The tree was now tall and strong, its roots deep in the earth. He placed his hand on the trunk and closed his eyes. He whispered a quiet thank you, not for the tragedy, but for the lesson. He understood that the mongoose had protected him twice, once with its life and forever with its message. The villagers continued to tell the story to their children, not as a tale of blame, but as a warning wrapped in compassion. They taught that loyalty must be trusted, that fear must be questioned, and that anger must be controlled. The story became part of the village's identity, shaping the way people spoke, listened, and acted. Over generations, the names of the farmer and his family were forgotten, but the loyal mongoose was never forgotten. It became a symbol, not of death, but of wisdom earned through pain. Travelers carried the story to distant lands, changing small hearts and quiet decisions along the way. In the end, the loyal mongoose was not just a story about an animal. It was a mirror held up to human nature. It showed how quickly love can turn into regret and how patience can save what anger destroys. It reminded the world that before raising a hand, before making a decision, before judging a situation, one must first pause and think. And in that pause, if one listens closely, the spirit of the loyal mongoose still speaks, softly reminding us that true wisdom begins with understanding. In the quiet moments of life, long after the pain had softened into memory, the lesson of the loyal mongoose remained clearer than ever. It was no longer a wound, but a scar, one that reminded the family and all who heard the story of the cost of acting without understanding. That scar did not weaken them, it guided them. The mother, now older and wiser, often sat beneath the tall tree where the mongoose rested. She spoke softly to herself, reflecting on how one moment of anger had changed many lives. She understood now that fear is a dangerous guide when left unchecked. Fear rushes the heart, clouds the mind, and silences reason. Through her suffering, she learned that calm thought is the strongest form of protection a human can have. The father believed the mongoose's loyalty represented something sacred. It showed that true loyalty expects trust in return. Without trust, loyalty becomes fragile, easily broken by doubt. He taught others that trust is not blind belief, but patient understanding, the willingness to see before judging. The son carried the lesson into the world. In times of conflict, he became a voice of reason. In moments of chaos, he became a place of calm. People often asked how he had learned such wisdom at a young age. He never told the story loudly, but when he did, he told it with respect, making sure the lesson reached the heart, not just the ears. As years turned into generations, the story of the loyal mongoose spread far beyond the village. It crossed borders, languages, and cultures. Though the details changed with each telling, the message remained the same. Think before you act, trust before you judge, and pause before anger decides your fate. Children who heard the story grew up remembering it in moments when their emotions ran high. Adults recalled it when facing decisions that could not be undone. The loyal mongoose became a silent teacher, one that never spoke, yet taught the most powerful lesson of all. The tree under which the mongoose rested continued to grow, its shade offering comfort to travelers and villagers alike. No one could see the sacrifice beneath its roots, but its presence was felt. It stood as proof that even the smallest life can leave the deepest impact. In the end, the loyal mongoose was not a story of tragedy alone. It was a story of wisdom born from pain, of loyalty met too late by understanding, and of a lesson that refused to be forgotten. It taught the world that anger is fast, regret is slow, and wisdom lives in the space between them. And so, whenever anger rises, whenever fear whispers lies, and whenever judgment feels urgent, the story gently reminds us to stop, to breathe, to think, and to choose wisely. Because once a moment passes, it can never return. As the story of the loyal mongoose comes to an end, its message remains long after the final words are spoken. What makes this story unforgettable is not only the tragedy, but the lesson hidden within it. A loyal heart was repaid with doubt, and a moment of anger destroyed a bond built on trust. This painful ending reminds us that some mistakes can never be undone. The mongoose gave everything it had without hesitation. It acted out of pure loyalty and love, expecting nothing in return. Yet its silence became its tragedy. This teaches us that loyalty must be protected by understanding, and trust must be supported by patience. When emotions control our actions, even good intentions can lead to devastating outcomes. This story asks us to slow down. In moments of fear, it urges us to pause. In moments of anger, it reminds us to think. Because once an action is taken, regret often arrives too late. A single second of patience can save years of sorrow. Even though this tale is old, its lesson is timeless. In families, friendships, and everyday life, misunderstandings still happen, anger still blinds, and assumptions still harm. That is why the loyal mongoose continues to be told, to warn, to teach, and to guide. Let this story stay with you. The next time anger rises, remember the loyal mongoose. Pause, think, choose wisely, because wisdom begins where patience lives.